I think it's pretty safe to say that the DCEU has stumbled. And by stumbled, of course, I mean stumbled and then fell down a flight of stairs and broke its spine. But anyways, I thought I'd go through each movie and just try and see where exactly they went wrong. So first off, Man of Steel came out in 2013, and honestly, I don't hate this movie. I actually think that the first two acts are okay. I actually like a lot of what they did with Clark growing up and his relationship with his parents, his Earth parents, and him sort of developing his code or whatever. I thought a lot of that was pretty good, not great though. And for me, the movie really falls off in the third act because it just devolves into a bunch of invincible aliens punching each other through buildings, and at a certain point, it just kind of becomes nonsense. But all that being said, I don't hate this movie. I think it definitely gets too much flack. It's really not that bad. I honestly don't even care about Superman snapping Zod's neck. See, the thing with that is that and we'll get to Batman v Superman later, but I think where I don't mind Superman doing it, and where I do Batman, and when I say that I mean killing. First of all, to the best of my knowledge, Superman doesn't really have a rule against killing. And secondly, when Superman snapped Zod's neck, it's not like he didn't just do it, he did it, and then he yelled into the air because he had to kill somebody. Like, it wasn't just a thing that happens. But either way, I don't hate Man of Steel, but the fact of the matter is that it wasn't exactly, positively received by a ton of people. It wasn't outright hated like Man of Steel or Suicide Squad, but I don't think a ton of people were exactly beaming about the movie. The movie made $668 million worldwide, and that's not bad, but it's also not great. And hey, to be fair, it's just starting out the universe, so it doesn't necessarily need to, crack $1 billion to be considered successful. But with it not making a ton of money and it not being exactly, it not getting glowing reviews by critics and not necessarily being beloved by fans, it's not exactly the greatest start to your universe. And then we get to Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. This one was not a pretty picture. So again, Zack Snyder comes back. He directed Man of Steel. He's also directing this movie, and yeah, it's just not very good. Now, listen. If you like any of these movies, that's fine. But the fact of the matter is that Batman v Superman was incredibly divisive, and when you're trying to build a cinematic universe, you can't have movies being this divisive, because then people they're just gonna simply fall off. And with this movie, I personally didn't like it. There are a lot of things that I liked about it, but there are a bunch of things that I didn't like about it that definitely weighs it down. I think Ben Affleck did a good job as Batman, but the way that they handled the character, I'm personally not a fan of. Superman, he's just kind of... honestly, here's the thing with Superman. I think most people today just kind of find him boring. I don't personally think that. I think you can tell interesting stories with Superman, but they're not really doing it in the movies. He's just this overpowered god creature that people just have a hard time relating to in any way. So I don't think most of the general audience really cares about Superman. I think a ton of people were pissed off at how they handled Batman, and the movie itself just wasn't great. It's just poorly written. A ton of wacky performances like Lex Luthor. The villain of Lex Luthor himself wasn't particularly great. Doomsday wasn't particularly great. Wonder Woman was just kind of shoehorned in there like, hey, I'm here too. The actual fight was just honestly underwhelming to me. And here's the thing. So here's, I think, the biggest underlying issue with this movie, right? You shouldn't do a Batman v Superman movie before properly setting up Batman and Superman, right? Look at Captain America Civil War. When Tony Stark and Captain America are on opposing sides in Civil War, we care about it because we've had years, being attached to these characters. Nobody really cared about Superman and Man of Steel, and nobody knows this Batman. And you didn't, and so, okay, now, they maybe could have maybe done a good job inside of this movie, but they just didn't really set up why these people are fighting. It's like Superman thinks Batman he goes too far, but he kills people too. He killed Zod at the beginning of Batman v Superman. He flies a dude through a fucking wall. Like, what are you even talking about, Superman? So they're just fighting for no real reason. Like, Batman thinks he's a threat, so that kind of makes sense. But why would Superman want to fight him? I don't know. It's not very good. It's just not very good. Now, again, if you like it, that's fine. But the reason why it didn't do as well is because people didn't really like it. Most people just didn't like it. Now, it's fine if you do, but most people didn't. And thus, it made around $800 million at the box office. Now, don't get me wrong. $800 million is a shit ton of money, but Batman v Superman should easily be $1 billion. And so, yeah, that's... Honestly, I think that Man of Steel wasn't a great setup for the universe, but I truly believe that Batman v Superman just kind of just dug its hole deeper, and the fact that most people didn't like it means that they didn't go out to support it. So when we get to another movie that we're going to get to shortly, no shit, they're not going to go and watch the movie. So in 2016, we got Batman v Superman, and then a little bit later that same year, we get Suicide Squad. Now, I had previously said that Batman v Superman just continued digging the hole. But, my god, Suicide Squad I don't know, they just grabbed a laser and shot a laser beam through that hole to the center of the fucking earth. Because what even with this movie? So here's the thing. Batman v Superman, Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, while I didn't love Man of Steel, I don't hate it as much as other people do, and I just flat out don't like Batman v Superman. While I don't love these movies, I at least appreciate the fact that they are Zack Snyder's vision, right? Like, Zack Snyder, he swung and he missed. He tried his movies out, they didn't work. You know, what more can you really ask for? Suicide Squad, on the other hand, it's just this Frankenstein's monster of a movie where David Ayer is a talented director. So here's the thing, like, he says that his vision got put on screen. Like, what we saw was the movie that he wanted to make, but I just don't believe that because the tones are completely inconsistent. Just like, you can just tell. Like, so actually, what the movie studios did is that they took David Ayer's footage and they sent it to a trailer company. So, in case you don't know, most movie studios don't cut their own trailers. They actually they have like dedicated trailer companies to cut their trailers. And that's fine. Like, making trailers is its own art form, absolutely. So yeah, but that art form doesn't apply to filmmaking. So you should probably let your director make his movie instead of getting a trailer company to make it. So that's the thing with this movie. It's just so inconsistent. There's so many hands in the pie that are trying to make this thing. And it's evident in the movie. It doesn't look like a unified director's vision. And that's why Suicide Squad actually kind of gets me angry. Because, hey, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, they didn't work out. What can you do? Suicide Squad, you can directly point at the handling of this movie, which was absolutely terrible. Suicide Squad that actually makes me angry. But either way, Suicide Squad comes out, still makes $700 million, which, that's still wildly successful, right? But after Suicide Squad, we actually get some pretty good stuff. So in 2017, we got Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman, I would say, is the biggest, the first success story that the DCEU has, right? It comes out, it gets positive critic reviews, and overwhelmingly positive buzz from the general public. People love this movie. I don't personally love it. I kind of put it in the same camp of Man of Steel, where I think the first two acts are okay, but that third act of Wonder Woman is just awful. Like, that final battle, like, holy shit, that is bad. Like, I know, like, a lot of people complain about CGI, and I'm kind of one of those guys that's, how else are they gonna do it, right? Like, you have to have CGI. And by the way, a ton of CGI you don't even notice, so CGI isn't inherently a bad thing. But that final battle scene of Wonder Woman, definitely an example of bad CGI. But either way, putting all that aside, the movie was overwhelmingly supported, overwhelmingly loved, and it made a total of $800 million, which, again, I chalk that as a bit of a disappointment for Batman v Superman, because Batman v Superman, it's Batman v Superman. It should make at least $1 billion. $800 for a Wonder Woman movie is a pretty big success, and the important thing is that the critic review, the reviews and the reception of it was positive. So that's an all around win for Wonder Woman. I definitely think that Wonder Woman is the first true success of the DCEU, an all around success. Now, Wonder Woman, big success. But what we go to next is by far the worst outing in the DCEU, not necessarily quality-wise, in terms of success. One of the biggest disasters in Hollywood history, I would say. So, Justice League comes out, and so here's the thing. Justice League, the continuity of Justice League, is very much tied into a Man of Steel, but especially more tied into a Batman v Superman. So, when Batman v Superman is as divisive as it was, I don't think it's not necessarily all that surprising that Justice League was such a huge failure. Not to mention that the movie itself was not that great either. In fact, it was kind of terrible. So, very much like Suicide Squad, Justice League it's very, I would argue more so than Suicide Squad. It is very clearly just a bunch of hands in the pot, being just working on the movie together. It's not someone's singular vision. And yeah, Justice League. So unfortunately, there's also some tragedy attached to the reason why it's not a director's singular vision, and that's because Zack Snyder's daughter, I believe, she committed suicide. So he had to back out of the project, to deal with his family. And look, we can talk all day about fucking why the DCEU sucks or whatever, but that's obviously a horrible tragedy, and this was a while ago, but I have nothing but the best wishes for Zack Snyder and his family to get over something like that. And yeah, I remember when that came out, it's like, oh fuck, Jesus Christ, like I remember that kind of just again put my mind in check that, oh yeah, none of this shit matters, right? Like, this is real shit happens, right? Like, none of this matters. But since we're talking about the DCEU, that unfortunately is one of the reasons why this movie is just so disjointed, because Zack Snyder had to leave the project, and then they get in Joss Whedon, and Joss Whedon, instead of trying to continue Zack Snyder's vision, he does everything he can to make a Marvel movie, which, I mean, if Joss Whedon was brought in from the beginning to make a Justice League movie that's more in the vein of a Marvel movie, okay, but once a director has already started started making the movie, at least finish the movie in a way that, the shit that you do and the shit that Zack Snyder did doesn't just is always fighting for its presence. Like, first of all, Joss Whedon, he turned the brightness up on almost everything that Zack Snyder shot. And that's why you get just all these weird shots that were clearly composed to not be that bright. But everything just looks really weird. Honestly, I didn't think that any of the comedic things that Joss Whedon did were particularly funny. Like, honestly, almost all the comedy in this movie just kind of fell flat. I thought, like, the Flash, he was supposed to be like this funny character, but I thought he was just annoying. I think this movie honestly fails on almost every level. Now, it's not as like the plot isn't as convoluted as Justice League, but that's because it's inherently very simple. It's literally just Steppenwolf comes down. He wants to get some boxes. He gets the boxes. The Justice League has to stop him. Very simple plot. So it's not as convoluted as Batman v Superman, but I almost appreciate Batman v Superman more because at least it was Zack Snyder's vision. At least he was trying to do something. Movies like Suicide Squad and Justice League just feel so cynical that they're not focusing on making the movie that they're currently making and trying to make it as best as it can be. It's just so cynical in the way that it tries to world build and shit like that. I don't know. It's just so cynical in the way that it's obvious that executives were just tossing in their opinions and shit. Like, it's just, yeah. Justice League, one of the biggest failures, both critically and financially. So, the movie only made $657 million. $657 million. Now, obviously, I'd like $657 million. But for this movie specifically, that is not good. That is absolutely not good. This movie that is supposed to be your Avengers is your least highest grossing movie of all time? Are you kidding me? That is terrible. That is absolutely we obviously know where they went afterwards, but put yourself in that time frame. Like, where do you go after that? Like, when your movie that is supposed to be your Avengers is your least highest grossing movie of all time. Like, where do you go after that? And by the way, the budget on this thing was massive. It was like over $300 million. Now, you might be saying, well, hey, if it's $300 million, then it made $600 million, then it made a profit. Not necessarily, because generally when you look at movie budgets, you kind of have to take their base budget and then you add on and you double that to account for the marketing and the take that the take from the money from ticket sales that the movie theaters take. So in reality, this movie, it barely broke even. It might have made a little bit of money, but not much. It essentially just broke even. So Warner Brothers were at an area where they honestly probably had no idea what they were going to do. But, so yeah, Justice League, massive failure, both critically and financially. So, Justice League, massive failure. Comes out in 2017, barely breaks even, doesn't do good critically. So what does Warner Brothers do? They actually handled it pretty well. So, they take a year, they evaluate their plans, they bring in Walter Hamada. He is the president of DC-based film productions, and he was brought in 2018. And what this guy did is that he established a brand new game plan. A really good game plan. So, what did they do? After Justice League, they take a break for a year, and then they come out with Aquaman. And so here's the thing. After Justice League, and so another pattern that you can see is that Warner Brothers has been very reactive. Reactionary. They would look at what they deemed were the biggest critiques of their previous movie, and would just change their game. They would just change their game plan right away before the next movie came out, and it just did not make for a very good film production cycle, because you can't just, like, in the middle of a movie's production, you can't just change it up and expect it to turn out well. So Walter Hamada, he decides, you know what? We are going to stop trying to focus so much on building a universe, and we're just going to try to make some good movies. So what does he do? he comes out with Aquaman, directed by James Wan, and it's a decent movie. It's actually not terrible. I mean, it's not great or anything, but it's not trying to build a cinematic universe. It doesn't have a bunch of corporate executive hands in the pie trying to alter James Wan's vision. James Wan is the director, by the way. And yeah, and again, it is James Wan's singular vision. They hired a director, and they let him do his thing. So, Aquaman, guess what? Fucking Aquaman is the highest grossing DC movie. What? How? I mean, honestly, look, I honestly don't have a rational explanation for this. I mean, I would have expected Aquaman to come out and sort of, hey, be a stepping stone, the DC getting some traction back, because Aquaman maybe was pretty good. But no, it just came out and it made $1 billion. Bitch, what? I mean, I guess, it made most of its money, like a fuck ton of its money overseas. So, I guess, like, foreign markets just like a bunch of flashy visuals. I don't know. But either way, they come out with Aquaman, and then after Aquaman, they come out with Shazam, which is actually a fantastic movie. First of all, it's a fantastic movie, and it's standalone. They gave a director a movie, and they let him make his movie. And I think at the end of the day, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, yes, Batman v Superman and Man of Steel weren't great critically and financially. And I mean, overall, at the end of the day, you need good movies to build a universe like this. It just has to happen. If they're not good movies, then it's just not going to be successful. If you look at Marvel, in their track record, most of their movies are pretty good, if not great. So, the biggest problem with DC is that their movies just weren't good enough. If you like their movies, that's great, it's fine, that's your opinion, but most people didn't, and it led to their failure. But, I would say right beneath that in importance is they need to just let their directors make the movies that they want, right? Now look, I'm not saying that executives can't have their input, but you meet with your director, you make a plan, and then once the executives agree to that plan, you let the director make his movie. That's just the most effective way of going about it. DC didn't do that. They were focusing way too hard on building a universe. These executives that at the end of the day aren't directors, they were trying to come in and put their input in making the movie. I still cannot wrap my brain around the fact that they let a trailer house edit Suicide Squad. That is insanity. That is absolute insanity. But I guess my point is, my overarching point is that they seem to be heading on the right track. So they came out with Aquaman, wild success. They came out with Shazam, which granted wasn't the greatest box office success. It made $360 million, which is not good. It's really not that good, but it did at the very least make its money back, and it eked out about $100 million profit, because it had a $100 million production budget. So it definitely made its money back, and it eked out a little bit of a profit, but not the greatest success. However, it was actually good. It was critically well received, and that's only good for your brand, because it's going to create a positive word of buzz for your universe moving forward. So, yeah. At the end of the day, I guess the main point that I want to make is that when you're building a universe, first of all, the first thing, because, a lot of people like to say that, oh, well, the reason DC failed was because they didn't make individual superhero movies before making a group movie. That's not really the case. The main thing is that you just have to make a good movie, because, look at Guardians of the Galaxy. They didn't make a Star-Lord movie, they didn't make a Gamora movie, they didn't make a Drax movie, they didn't make a Groot movie, they didn't make a Rocket Raccoon movie. They just made Guardians of the Galaxy. The difference is that they made a movie that didn't rely upon you having, previous previous attachment to those characters. Batman v Superman kind of did. Just the fact that you're having Batman fight Superman, like, yes, they're iconic characters, but we don't really care. They didn't make us care about these specific iterations of the characters. So I wouldn't say that just simply by not making individual Batman movie, an individual Wonder Woman movie, I wouldn't say that's not necessarily the problem why these movies failed. It's just that they weren't good enough. That's, at the end of the day, the crux of why these movies failed. They weren't good enough, and then for going further in, executives, they just came in, thought they knew better, and they just fucked up the movies even worse. So, yeah, I think that's basically going to be it for this video. The DCEU is honestly, it's one of those things that I haven't particularly liked a lot of the things that they did, but I definitely root for them, and I'm actually excited for the future because coming up, I think next we have the Joker, which, by the way, I think looks fantastic and doesn't take place in the main continuity of the DCEU. Then we have Wonder Woman 80 something, I don't know, whatever. I think it's Wonder Woman 1982, something like that. That could be good. I enjoyed the first Wonder Woman, at least the first two acts of it. That could potentially be good. Then we have Birds of Prey, which, granted, that looks fucking terrible. But then we have Matt Reeves' Batman. We have a Matt Reeves' Batman movie coming out, and boy, Matt Reeves directing a Batman movie. That's honestly all I need to know. Apparently, Robert Pattinson is going to be Batman. I'm not too quick to judge him just because of Twilight. I actually plan on seeing some of the movies that he's been in before I make like an actual judgment. But yeah, look, the point. I'm sorry, I went off rambling, but the point is that the DCEU, it didn't start off great for reasons that I've laid out, but they actually seem to be course correcting in a pretty decent manner. Their last two movies have, Aquaman was critically and financially successful, and Shazam was, while it wasn't all that financially successful, it was critically successful. And that's only going to lead to more positive word of mouth for their universe. So I'm optimistic about the future of the DC movies. Obviously they're not reaching success in the same success that Marvel is reaching in terms of creating a great universe. But I think that going about making good solid movies that don't necessarily connect with each other, I think there's also a market for that, and I want to see that. So yeah. DCEU, do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think I'm a DC hater and a Marvel fanboy? Why? Because I'm wearing a fucking Marvel shirt while talking about DC? That's I honestly forgot I was wearing this when I started recording this, but yeah, either way, if you did enjoy this video, please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, check out the gaming channel. There's currently an Arkham City Let's Play going up. That was fun to record. Yeah. Goodbye.